is a Gould's 3700 power frame. So this would be the drive end. And as you can see here, this is where you would put an oil reclassifier for oil mist. And then if you had a oil ring lubrication, your oil ring would sit in this area here and would sling oil either up on that shelf or on the opposite side on that shelf, depending on the rotation. And part of the oil would go downhill into the front radial bearing up here. And this race or otherwise would flow back downstream into the thrust bearing in the back. Now if you had ring oil lubrication, that would be appropriate. But if you do not have ring oil lubrication, you have oil mist instead, then what you would want to do is epoxy up both this area here as well as on the other side. And that is so that you wouldn't have oil mist coming into this port here and then going around your bearing. You would want it to come out of that port and go into the front of your bearing, through your bearing, and into the oil sump. But if you leave this cavity unfilled, then you would allow the oil mist to possibly go past to your bearing itself. The same thing goes with the rear end cover for the bearing. You can see there's an indication of top on the back here. So it would go on like this. You'll notice the same thing in the rear here. The oil that comes down through this channel on whichever side is appropriate for the correct rotation of the pump would then come through that cavity and then into this cavity on the rear. So likewise, if you use oil mist and you're converting a ring oil lubricated machine into oil mist lubrication, then you would need to epoxy up these fittings and this bottom drain as well, because you don't want your oil mist to come into your rear thrust bearing through this port and then go out through here or out through here. So when you epoxy up the rear cover slot here, you block this area, and when you epoxy up the rear cover slots here and here, you block the ability for the oil mist to go back out through the bearing here, and that forces the oil mist through the thrust bearing itself.